Hi. So I am in my freezing cold basement prepared to talk about the Arctic. I figured it was very fitting. So for the geography book, I chose to read Prisms of Geography by Tim Marshall. This book was published in 2015 and is 277 pages long. I purchased it off Amazon. I chose the book because I've been really wanting to read it for a while now. Probably the past few months, and I figured this was the perfect opportunity to actually read it. So it examines 10 different places on Earth and explains how geography shapes the fate of different nations. For instance, in a chapter about Russia, it explains how the western part of the country has always had the most conflict because of its location right next to other nations, but that the east has little conflict because of the vast tundra. It's also nearly impossible to cross the Ural Mountains into the more populated areas of Russia. So there's another chapter that goes into detail about how the U.S. is nearly invulnerable because of its location and being surrounded by oceans on its east and west coast. The chapter also explains the importance of the Mississippi River to the nation as a whole, which I thought was really interesting. I love learning anything about the Mississippi River and just about how it works. Each chapter was really interesting for its own reasons. I mostly enjoyed the ones about Russia and the Middle East, just because I really think it helped to further explain what's going on today, conflict now. So I always keep up on the news of Russia and Ukraine, so it was interesting to read about past conflict and its relation to geography and also how it relates to conflict going on right now. My favorite chapter of all was definitely about the Arctic. So there are many things that I learned and found interesting. One of my favorite quotes from the book is from that, and it just explains where they got the term Arctic. So it says, the word Arctic comes from the Greek Arctikos, which means near the bear, and it is a reference to the Ursa Major constellation, whose last two stars point toward the North Star. So I had no clue that that's why the Arctic was named that. So I thought it was really cool. The chapter also goes into detail about global warming and how it could affect trade and relations in the future. So first of all, I really liked how Marshall was able to talk about global warming, but not include any kind of bias. I know from either side, like he didn't really include an environmentalist type of standpoint saying that like the world is going to end and everything like that. His book's not about that, so I was glad that I didn't see it. He just stated scientific facts and how it could affect nations touching the Arctic Ocean, like how Russia is going to have the most, just how they have the most land touching the Arctic, so they obviously have more play in anything that happens, and they've already prepared with more icebreakers and everything like that. I also learned from the reading that directly under the North Pole they dropped like a titanium, or they submerged to the bottom, I guess, and dropped a titanium flag, which I thought was very neat. And I really don't know much about the Arctic, so I thought all of that was really interesting. I also enjoyed the conclusion of the book. So in this part, he discusses space and how politics play a part in the exploration of it, and that there's a competition for supremacy in outer space. So he explains how advanced nations are preparing for wars in space, which I know we've seen a lot of recently in the news. And his final paragraph explains how the world has a long way to go before being able to explore outer space and the universe as one humanity, which I thought was really neat because I think that's kind of important for outer space. And I know that right now with satellites and landing on the moon and everything, that it's definitely not as a whole, which I think it would be cool to see that, but I know that that would probably never happen. One thing I would have liked that wasn't in the book would be more context on ancient history and how geography played a role then and now, maybe even comparing the similarities. I don't know if that's exactly what Obviously, it's not what he was really going for in the book, so maybe it would be cool for another book. I don't know. So this book really held my attention for most of its entirety, but I think it's also probably only because I have a lot of interest in geography and geopolitics. So really, I don't know if this book would be used in a school. So definitely for teacher instruction, possibly in a high school world history class or an AP class. Um, Only because it might be dense and boring for people who don't have interest in the subject, honestly. But I really enjoyed it, and I thought he put most of it in layman's terms. Anyone could read this, really, and gain an understanding that they didn't have before. But just in the classroom, I think it might be a little tough for students. If used in the classroom setting, I think it would be essential to break the book up into different parts and to not read it all at one time. For instance, students could read the chapter about China when they're learning about China, and Russia when they're learning about Russia, and so on. I was thinking that it would also be a neat idea to form groups based off each chapter of the book, and students could maybe do a presentation about what they've read. I think that would be something that could be doable in a class just because it does break it up into a little chunk. All in all, I really enjoyed the book, but definitely in a school setting, I would only use it for my own studying or to use in small portions of the book and lesson plans. But if I had to rate the book, I would definitely give it a 4 out of 5, just because I actually really enjoyed it, and I think it would be awesome for any kind of social studies teacher to read. I think it could be really beneficial, honestly. So, thank you.